All right, well, it's a couple minutes past 3, so let's go ahead and get started slowly, and hopefully we'll have a few more people joining us, trickling in here this afternoon. Well, I first wanted to say a big hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Edens. I'm the program coordinator for the Colorado Alliance for Environmental Education. And we know your time is valuable, so we really appreciate you spending this next hour with us for our monthly webinar series. Today's topic is walking field trips, mapping outdoor instruction opportunities. And before I pass it on to Anna, I just have a couple introductory slides. If you aren't familiar with CAEE, we are the Professional Association of Environmental Educators here in Colorado. And our mission is to advance environmental education in Colorado 3 ways, by fostering collaboration, mobilizing support, and driving excellence. And through our members, we're able to reach about more than 800,000 learners each year in Colorado. So if you haven't engaged with us in any other way, we invite you to learn more about our organization and ways that you can get involved. So one way that we hope to drive excellence is through our monthly webinar series, and we try to choose topics of interest to the EE community here in Colorado. And our goals are to share and spark ideas, to help all of us improve our practice, and to connect with one another. I know that daily life can get really busy, and so these are one way we hope to be able to kind of slow down and connect with what each other is doing across the state. I did want to mention an upcoming event because it's our biggest event of the year, and one of my favorites, one that I always look forward to. It's our annual Advancing EE Conference and Awards Luncheon. It's coming up in just a couple weeks here in Denver. If you haven't been to it, it's a 2-day conference, Friday and Saturday. We've got over 50 presenters scheduled. Typically, we have between 250 and 300 participants from all across Colorado. So it's a great way, again, to share and spark those ideas, connect with one another. We've got a networking night, we've got great speakers, and of course the awards lunch on Saturday to celebrate our 2018 awards winner. So if you don't know about that conference or want to learn more, we have all the information up on our website, and registration is still open. A quick thank you to our webinar sponsor, Endeavor. They make it possible for us to do these webinars, so thank you to them. And then finally, we are on the Zoom platform, so congratulations everyone for being able to connect and hopefully not having any technical difficulties. All lines are muted, and that's just to kind of take care of the background noise. But if you have any questions, if technical issues come up for you, feel free to chat those in. We also encourage you to use the chat function to connect with us and one another throughout the webinar. These are always tough to have good discussions because we're online here, but through the chat function, we hope that you post questions and comments to one another, links that come to mind, just anything to help engage each other throughout the hour here. And then one final note before I throw it over to Anna is that I will be sending you a follow-up email in the next coming days. It's going to have a quick 5-minute survey about the webinar today, and then it'll have a link to the recording here and any resources that Anna mentions throughout the presentation. So look for that from me in the coming days here. So without further ado, I will introduce Anna Cochran. Anna works as an environmental health specialist. She recently received her Master of Arts in Education in Natural Sciences and Environmental Education degree from Hamline University. Anna also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies and Geography, graduating summa cum laude from the University of Colorado. So I will throw it over to her at this point.
All right, thank you. Let me get my screen share going. Oops, wrong button there. Okay, hi everyone, this is Anna Cochran. I'm excited to join all of you today to talk about walking field trips, And I'd like to thank the Colorado Alliance for Environmental Education and Lisa for the opportunity to present today. Can everybody see my screen all right and hear me okay?
I think so. I can. So I haven't heard otherwise. So I think
all right, excellent. All right. So here's a brief outline of what I plan to cover today. I'll begin by introducing the walking field trip model and why it's beneficial for students. I'll then discuss the selection of routes and use a case study example of a map that has already been created. Then we'll move into a discussion of how to plan and conduct walking field trips and additional resources for where to find more information about outdoor instruction. All right, so let's start with a definition of walking field trips. The walking field trip idea is to think about what areas are accessible and available for routine use. So these are places around the school or other education facility, perhaps within half a mile to a mile, depending on your group, that can be used as outdoor instruction areas throughout the year. And of course, field trips to farther away natural areas are also great, but they may require cost, coordination of buses, and difficulty of planning, and other challenges that make it difficult to visit as often. And again, the goal with walking field trips is to plan out places that are easily accessible, free of cost, that can be used regularly throughout the year. So as we go through the presentation, think about your school or educational base and what's available right there in your neighborhood. I just want to briefly touch upon the educational theory behind this model. Place-based education promotes learning from the local community and natural environment through a hands-on approach and practice in solving real-world problems. It can be used for all subjects, including language arts, math, social studies, and science, to name a few. And as Sobel describes, this approach to education increases academic achievement, helps students to develop stronger ties to their community, enhances students' appreciation for the natural world, and creates a heightened commitment to serving as active, contributing citizens. The State Education and Environmental Roundtable coined the term using the environment as an integrating context for learning, which is defined as a framework for interdisciplinary, collaborative, hands-on, engaged learning. And this concept suggests that all subjects, not just those that discuss environmental processes directly, can be taught outside for academic merit, and that content areas can be effectively combined using hands-on application in natural settings. So in addition to the broader theory, walking field trip model fits in well to Colorado's environmental education plan, of which some of you might already be familiar. The Colorado Environmental Education Plan identified 3 main goals to accomplish. In summary, to build upon networks that support environmental literacy, to promote field and standards-based learning opportunities, and to provide for teacher professional development in these areas. So you can see that goal number 2 is listed on the screen, which is to connect teachers and students to standards-based, relevant environmental education experiences in an effort to develop lifelong health, wellness, and civic-minded behaviors. And I have this up because I think sharing maps to local routes and around schools directly works towards achieving this mission. So among additional strategies for this goal, the Colorado Environmental Education Plan listed the following bullet points to accomplishing goal number 2. And I also want to mention that this project aligns with Great Outdoors Colorado Protect, Connect, and Inspire goals as well, and in particular the GoCo Inspire initiative, which seeks to promote youth connection to nature and increase utilization of parks, trails, public lands, and other high-quality green space. Okay, I'd like to share with you today 2 elements of my capstone project I recently completed. And my hope is that this will be helpful in promoting walking field trips in other areas. So the first is an example walking field trip map that I'll pull up here in a minute. And the other is an instructional guide, which will be sent out via email today to everybody that registered for the webinar. I want to point out that my target audience was elementary school educators, administrators, and district staff in rural areas, but that this could be easily adapted for other programs. And in fact, one of the main findings was that walking field trips is a widely replicable technique that can be scaled and grown to fit other school districts and environmental settings. The goal of both of these resources is to pair exemplary practices in environmental education with the ease and accessibility of nearby natural spaces. We've just talked about the connection to other statewide efforts that this project aligns with, and now I want to move into some of those advantages as well. So I presume that there's already a high level of interest from those who registered for the webinar today, but I'd like to highlight some of the benefits and supporting research for this method of instruction. So if you're already convinced that learning outside is beneficial for students, think about how you would use this research to reinforce the value to others, perhaps to parents, administrators, or other colleagues. So let's start with academics. Multiple studies show that students significantly improve their academic performance when they're given opportunities to learn outside. This includes higher test scores in reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. And one of the most compelling studies, I thought, was one completed by the State Education and Environment Roundtable, which involved a comprehensive study of 40 schools in 12 states and overwhelmingly found that students learn more effectively within an environment-based context than within a traditional education framework. Grade point averages and test scores in multiple subject areas were improved when natural and community resources were utilized in criteria, or in that curricula. In fact, 92% of analytical comparisons with traditional methods showed that students using environmental programming would academically outperform their peers. Studies also show that students are more motivated to learn and that creativity, analytical thinking, problem solving, and leadership are promoted in outdoor instructional settings. And also note as we're going through that there are sources at the bottom where you can find more information on these studies. All right, environmental literacy. An added benefit to outdoor instruction is expanded awareness of environmental and community topics. Environmental literacy is the ability to understand complex environmental issues and to apply this knowledge to make responsible, sustainable decisions. I think the Colorado Environmental Education Plan stated it well in saying that because of the multiple ways the environment intersects with personal and community lives, developing an environmentally literate population has the potential to dramatically improve the lives of all Coloradans. There are also associated behavioral and psychological benefits. Outdoor instruction has been shown to decrease disruptive behavior in class while increasing student engagement and focus. Studies found that environmental context inspired and motivated teachers along with the students as well. There are also some associated health benefits. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Surgeon General have advised schools to promote policies that support walking to and from school, as well as during class time. All right, now let's move on to where to go. One of the reasons why walking field trips is a widely replicable technique is that the environmental setting where academic learning and environmental education can occur can take many forms, whether a garden, a park, or a nature path. I chose areas that are within a half a mile to a mile of my starting point, but this could obviously differ depending on the age group that you're planning for. So in beginning this process of mapping out these nearby locations, I started by reviewing satellite images and existing maps of the area to get a general idea of what was around each school. And after this, it is essential to go out and see what you find by walking around. So as I conducted the mapping project, there were some limitations that dictated which routes would be applicable to include in the map. Some of these were geography, distance, safety concerns, access, and availability of resources. I had initially considered only selecting routes within a half a mile distance from each school. However, this proved to be unrealistic for some of the schools included in the project. Expanding to 1 mile out allowed for greater opportunities. Topography was often a challenge. Some paths were excluded because the grade was too steep and perilous for the age group, in my opinion, even though the distance fit the 1 mile perimeter. Lack of safe road crossings or sidewalks was also a barrier in some cases, and particularly when a road or major highway divided a potential route with the ability to easily cross. These challenges were not unexpected, but they did influence my final selections and maybe also anticipated in your planning. You may find that some schools are better connected to public lands, parks, trails, walking paths, river access points, and other outdoor community spaces than others. Also, make sure to take photos of what you find. I found that these are helpful for remembering what's at each site, but you can also use them when making your map. Although there are other platforms that would work well, I chose Google My Maps because of the ease of use for educators and the ability to easily share and access from any computer. And I really want to highlight also that this is a free resource, and there are a lot of tutorials for how to use the program and input data online. So here's a screenshot of the routes around one of the schools I mapped. And you can see on the left that you can input lines, shapes, and points onto the map, which here you can see the points are listed as photos. And I categorized each layer by school since I was mapping several in the same map. And you can go back later to rename these, as I'll show you in the live version, rather than the generic names you see there on the left. The district I mapped includes 10 total schools, and I focused on the 6 of these schools that instruct elementary grade levels, which was 18 total routes throughout that area. And when you click on one of the lines, photos, or shapes that you've created, there's a pull-down feature which pops up that displays some inputted data and also a photo. And you can input whatever text you would like on the layers of the map. I chose to list access, amenities, and features on each route here, but it's an open text to whatever you'd like to put there. Overall, I found that Google My Maps was really easy to use and a great way to share that information and document it in order to be easily shared. Here's an example of a photo that's just a point on the map that brings up a photo without any text associated with that. Okay, and with that, I'd like to pull up a version of the live site. And so this is public domain. It's publicly available online. And it's just an example of what one of these walking field trip maps can look like as a way to share information. So you can see kind of some clusters of information here around the municipalities in which I mapped. And there's a zoom in feature here. You can zoom in and out on different areas. So I'm going to zoom in here so that you can see some of the routes in a little closer detail. And some things I'd like to show you with the live link. You can see I've renamed all of the trails here to match their actual name. And the left navigation pane shows all of these different layers, which you can turn on and off. So you can see there's several different routes here leading from different schools, but you can deselect each layer if you want to make it a little bit easier to read one of those in particular. You can click on all of the different aspects that you've inputted, whether that is a point, which is a photo on the map, or a line, or also a polygon area. So if we zoom in a little bit closer here, you can see that this is a park area, which I've highlighted the entire area. And when you click on it, that changes to an inputted photo that I've added, and then also this text description. You can see I've also chosen to add another point here, which is another photo, just to add to the data. And then similarly, if we click on one of these lines, which is another mapped route, you can see the photo change to a place along that map, along that route, and then the access, amenities, and features here on the left. You can see I've also chosen to add other photos along the way, just to detail what educators might see along that path. All right, so looking back on this process, I think it's important to keep this updated, perhaps including seasonal information, changes to routes or access, and adding new routes. Also, specific attention was given to locations nearby each school that would be accessible to those with mobility needs, but I think that this could be detailed further. Interestingly, mileage is displayed when you add a line on the editor's view, but this is not visible in the public view that I can find. So I would recommend adding that into the description as well, just so that everybody using the map has a good idea of how long in mileage the route goes. I also think it's important to incorporate feedback into the design once your routes are actually used by students and teachers. And it's very easy to go back and edit all of that information once it's been inputted. So I'd like to pause at this time and see if there's any questions on the map design. And I'll give just a minute to see if anybody wants to type in any questions or comments into the chat box. All right, are there any questions at this point? Let me see if I can pull this up on my screen at the same time.
I can help you as well, Anna. I just had a question of
Sure.
how long it took you to do the mapping process per each school.
This project took about a month to complete, I'd say. The research took quite a bit longer in figuring out what I wanted the scope of the project to be. And so the actual mapping of the routes, I'd say, took about a month to visit all of the locations, to rule out different sites, and determine what should be added, and then to physically add those into the program.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I don't see any other questions. I just see a comment, seems pretty straightforward from Kristen. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and thank you so much for that comment. I think that this is a really straightforward idea and program, but it's one that's not used as often as I think it could be. So I think it's really great to be able to share this resource and to think about the areas that are right around your school and how to utilize those a little bit more fully. All right, so with no additional questions, I'll keep rolling here. So next, I'd like to move into how to plan and conduct walking field trips. And again, I had elementary school in mind as I prepared this, but it could be adapted and scaled and grown to fit other educational settings. So as we've already talked about, make sure you're familiar with the route before bringing students along, which again is pretty straightforward of an idea. Also to check in with the land manager before your field trip and see if any reservations are required, especially if you're using any sites that are open to the public but might be a museum or a special location that might like that advance notice. Also plan how to respond to challenging scenarios as they arise, such as challenging weather and wildlife encounters. Obviously, also follow administrative requirements for your organization, which may include obtaining administrative approval, additional staffing, and permission slips. And be sure to plan for children with healthcare needs and identify emergency procedures. Before the field trip day, it might also be helpful to prepare the class, to discuss expected behavior with your class, including pedestrian safety, personal conduct, the academic focus, and how to react to wildlife. You may want to tell students and their parents, depending on the age group, to bring necessary equipment to school, which may include water bottles, adequate walking shoes, etc. It might also be helpful to identify the learning focus and plan activities for the walk or outdoor instruction time well in advance. Natural environments are very versatile, which can be used for settings for various instructional techniques, including individual and group work, hands-on activities, or reflection time. You can even share photos of the map route, anticipated features, educational themes, and activities with students ahead of time to get them excited for the walk and prep for what to look for along the way. There are some really great resources, such as the Excellence in Environmental Education Guidelines for Learning, which may give you ideas for how to integrate environmental education into the curriculum. During outdoor time, you'll want to bring along items for safety. Some examples are listed here in the bullets, and to plan for logistical needs, such as restrooms. All right, and of course, plan out the lesson and what additional items you may want to bring. One resource that I think is really neat for walking field trips is the Beatles walk and talk routine, and I would definitely encourage you to check that out. It helped makes beneficial use of classroom time while walking by using one-on-one discussion of students. So that's a really great resource, and I've included the link there in the bullet. And then afterwards, you can tie in lessons learned in the field with classroom work and follow up on the knowledge gained, interesting observations, and other aspects that students enjoyed. Hopefully there was something that was enjoyable along the way. And then just as in any lesson, note any changes you would make next time. So as I mentioned, the walking field trip and instructional guide will be shared along with this presentation. Oh, is there a question? Okay.
Nope, I think we just got a bing bong that someone new joined, so.
Oh, no problem. So as I mentioned, this walking field trip guide will be shared along with a video of the presentation today. And it contains all of the resources at the end. And so at the very top here, you can see a link to my full research paper. And I'd like to especially thank Sarah Johnson for being one of the content reviewers on the Capstone project, and also for helping to share this work on EE Pro. And also a thank you to Michael Weil for being my second content reviewer. And below that are some links to some helpful resources. And these are the basics of which you might already be familiar. But there's a lot of really great information out there for outdoor instruction. All right, I would like to thank you all for attending today, and I'd like to open it up at this time for any additional questions or discussion. It looks like I can pull up the chat right here. Let's see, are there any additional questions?
I had another question, Anna, if nobody else wants to jump in. Just about how you have rolled it out to teachers at those schools, or what's the process for kind of like involving them in the process?
Oh, that's a great question. So as I had mentioned, this was created as part of a capstone project, but I wanted, in approaching that, to make it that was something that would be relevant and could be used in this area. And so this was completed just a few months ago. And so I've been working on first just finishing the degree, and then I've worked with some local partnering agencies that are involved in the schools and able to share this map. And I also want to thank you for the opportunity to get this out more broadly as well through this webinar.
Great. You might be able to see the chats, but I can help you with that too. Just
sure. Yeah.
I've been a couple questions on just what's the best resource for setting up Google My Maps, or some suggestions for using Google My Maps. There's a lot of questions kind of around that as the technology used here.
Yeah, as I said, I picked this one because I thought it was a pretty intuitive program and fairly easy to use. Some of the other research I read was saying you could even use paper maps if you wanted to, but I think that the ability to share this link and have everybody be on the same page is really beneficial. And so there's a few different YouTube videos, and also if you go to Google, there's some tutorials for how to work with that program. But you can input, as you're playing with it, different lines, and you could see the different colors on my map. And so I chose to change those to different colors so that they could be a little easier to see on the map. And so you can input, sorry, I was looking at different questions coming in. So you can input different lines on the map and just kind of draw them out along a route. And I did those by hand, just kind of stretching that out along the base map. And then you can add those points fairly easily as well. Are there any specific questions with working with the program that I haven't answered? We'll leave that open as questions come in. I want to say thank you for your comment about Brooklyn, New York. That is a very different environment. In some of my classes, we talked about how you can make use of different resources in a city environment. And it'd be interesting to hear your feedback of what would be immediately accessible there, whether that is a lot more parks and museums and different resources there, and what you find. Oh, I see a good question that came in, whether you can track your progress on the maps. I have not seen that function, but I really like that idea to be able to track where you are going along the way. But I have not seen that yet, to be able to track with a mobile device where you are within that location. It'd be interesting if you could use Google Maps kind of along with this to see if that would work. Are there any other questions I haven't addressed that you can see, Lisa?
Not that I can see. You can leave it open another minute if folks have questions. Oh, one just came in about the kinds of information other than photos you could include.
Well, that's a good question. So the photos I put as just the points on the map, but you can add, it's just an empty text description box. So I chose to add access, amenities, and features as my categories, but you could type in whatever text you think would be most relevant for the group that's using your map. And so that's the type of text that I included, and then I think you could upload, other than photos, it's really just that text and photo, and then lines on the map.
Great. Any last questions? Well, I'll wrap us up, but if you think of anything and while I'm wrapping us up, feel free to chime in. I just wanted to thank Anna so much. This was really interesting to learn about. I know I have an 8-year-old at an elementary school, and it's got me thinking about his local environment and how I can maybe help facilitate some of these discussions. So I know I learned a lot, and I appreciate your research and your time presenting today, Anna.
Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate the comments and feedback that are coming in through the chat, and the opportunity to present to all of you today. If you do think of anything in the future, feel free to reach out, and thank you all very much.
Yeah, I will follow up with an email with that PDF that Anna mentioned, along with the recording if you want to go back and listen to it again or share it with your other coworkers. And then that survey, again, if you could take 5 minutes just to share your feedback, that always helps us improve our future webinars. So thank you again for joining us. Thanks to Anna, and we hope to see you at our conference and on future webinars.
All right, thank you so much.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.